Good morning, grade nines. We're going to look today at our second sonnet entitled How Do I Love Thee, or otherwise known as Sonnet 43. And this time it is written by a lady named Elizabeth Barrett Browning. So underneath your answers to the questions on Sonnet 104, please write there Sonnet 43, How Do I Love Thee? And then underneath write by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Now, as you can see on the screen, she lived quite a long time after William Shakespeare. She lived during the 1800s, which still was not a time period where people could just freely go and express their love for each other, although by this time, people could write love poems to each other, and they could write books, and there were plays about love and expressions of love. So definitely times had changed. But it was a time period where women were not considered to be very intelligent, and it was also a time where a woman's rights weren't really taken into account. A woman was ruled by her father, and then when she married, she would then be ruled and controlled by her husband. Now, what's interesting about Elizabeth Barrett Browning is that she was nearly 40 years old when she finally left her father to marry her husband. And her husband is Robert Browning, who is also a poet. And it was actually through their poetry that they met. Now, the story is that Elizabeth's brother died tragically, and her parents couldn't really or didn't really get over the death of the brother, but clung to her and basically kept her captive, basically kept her under lock and key. And she lived a very depressing life in her sort of late teen, early young adult life. She lived a very depressing life because that's when her brother had died, and she was then basically kept captive by her very controlling and obsessive father. And instead of marrying her off to a suitable man, as they did in those days, he kept her for himself. And she basically, because of her depression, she became a drug addict. She used opium as a way to find release or escape from her circumstances. And it was during that time that she also then wrote poetry. And her poetry was her escape. And somehow Robert Browning got hold of her poetry, and he was intrigued by her poetry. And he then made an effort to meet her, and they fell in love. And he then convinced her to run away with him, which she then did. And when she ran away with him, her father was so angry that he disinherited her. So she was a person who could never really experience love of parents and family and the man that she was going to marry. It was one or the other. And so for her, that was quite confusing. And it was during this time that she wrote this poem, and it is an expression of her love for her husband. Because he basically was quite literally her savior. So it's a beautiful love poem. It is a sonnet, and so I'm going to ask you what kind of sonnet. So the first thing you are going to do is you are going to look at the last two lines. So let's see if the last two lines rhyme. Choose death. Does that rhyme? No, it does not. So therefore, it is not a Shakespearean sonnet, grade nines. It is a Petrarchan sonnet, an Italian sonnet. So because it's an Italian sonnet, then you must know that the poem is divided into an octave and a sestet. So the octave will be A, B, B, A, ways, height, sight, grace, yes. A, B, B, A, days, light, right, praise, yes. And then the sestet is C, D, C, D, C, D. So use faith, lose breath, choose death. So there we can see the rhyme scheme fits with an Italian sonnet. So let us have a look at what she says. So the very first line, she says, how do I love thee? It's a question. So maybe you are thinking about a rhetorical question, and it would be awesome if you were. But what you need to remember is a rhetorical question is a question that does not require an answer. It is there to make us think. But she does answer. So when we read the rest of the poem, you're going to see she's going to answer in depth, actually, how how she actually loves him. She's going to detail the ways that she loves him. So therefore, it is not a rhetorical question because there are answers. All right. So she says, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." That line there tells us that there were many ways. There were many reasons why she loved him, because she can count them. So it implies that there were many. "I love thee to the depth and the breadth and height my soul can reach. When feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace, I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need. By sun and candlelight, I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with the passion put to use." Um, so she's talking about how she loves him, like the depth of her love. All right, so she says, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height of my soul can reach." So she doesn't just love him physically, she doesn't just love him emotionally, she loves him with everything that she has. Now, depth and breadth and height are things that can be measured. They're tangible things, they can be measured. And she's saying, you can measure my love by the things that I do, or that I feel, or that how I express myself. So with every being, she loves him. When feeling out of sight for the ends of being an ideal grace, I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need, by sun and candlelight. So she's saying that she loves him all the time. So she doesn't just love him with everything that she has, but she loves him all the time. She loves him in the daytime when the sun is out, and she loves him at night when she has to use candles. So she loves him when she's busy, and she loves him when she's quiet. Every single part of her day is consumed by her love for him. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee freely, without restriction, without hesitation, without condition. She loves the whole of him, and she gives the whole of herself to him. As men strive for right, that is the right to do something. So she will fight for the right to love him, and she had to fight for her right to love him. So that line would have meant quite a lot to her. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee purely, innocently, respectfully, religiously, correctly. There's nothing wrong with our love that we have. As they turn from praise, and that line could perhaps mean that not everyone appreciated their love. We know certainly that her father didn't appreciate their love, but that didn't stop them from loving each other. I love thee with the passion put to use in my old griefs, and with my childhood's faith. So now in the sestet, she's talking about the loves that she had when she was a child. And she talks about her old griefs, reference to the bad things that she had in her childhood, things that made her unhappy, her brother's death, for example. The relationship that she had with her father would be another one. So the passion that she had to use in her life when she was a child, she's now transferring over to the love that she has for her husband. And with my childhood's faith. A childhood's faith, a child is innocent, they love unconditionally, they just expect their parents to protect them, they don't worry about anything, and that is how she feels about her husband. She doesn't have to worry about him protecting or loving her. She knows that he's just going to do that, and she expects that because he treats her so well that she has come to expect that. So she loves him as a child would love their parents. I love thee with a love I seem to lose with my lost saints. So I love you with the same kind of love as I loved when I was a child. And her lost saints, again, would be her brother, her parents, that she's now lost because they won't accept her relationship. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life. I love you with everything that I have, with every breath that I take, every smile, everything that makes me happy, everything that makes me sad. She says, I love you with every part of me. And if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. So in that last line there, she's saying that her love for him is eternal. It will last even past death. And if God choose, showing us that she was religious, showing us that she did value God and God's teachings. And she didn't feel that her love for him was against what God wanted. And she's saying basically that the only person or being that can cause her not to love him would be God. But as far as other men, she loves him unconditionally. So yeah, and that's a beautiful, beautiful poem and a personal love poem, one that she really wrote for him and for the man that saved her. Okay, so there, grade 9s is just an explanation you can read on your own, and then there are the questions going up to 4.4. Please answer those questions in your books. Again, write down any questions that you might have if you don't understand something for your teacher to help you with when you come back to school. Yeah, good luck and goodbye.